It could be said that jails and prisons have become the new asylums. In a study done by the Treatment Advocacy Center, it's shown that individuals with serious mental illnesses in jails and prisons exceeds the numbers in state psychiatric hospitals by tenfold. With these individuals being extremely vulnerable, let's look at how they are treated in these prisons and how they even ended up here. Let's get into it. What's up, YouTube? How you feeling? How you living? What's good? It's your girl Francine. Today is Friday. I'm forgetting what day of the week it is, y'all. How long have I been in this house? I don't know. I moved here a month ago, and I have not really left more than like 3 times since I've been here. But anyway, it's Friday, which means it's Fact Friday. We get to the straight facts about what's really going on. And today we're talking about something that I am very interested in. This is actually something I wrote about when I was in law school, because like when I learned about this, it's so crazy to me how this even happened, why this is happening, and that is the enormous amount of people with mental illnesses that are in jails and prisons, pretty much due to nothing other than having a mental illness and not having the resources to get treatment. In researching for this video and in researching for my paper, which was a while ago, so I did kind of research to make sure everything was up to date. It's really sad because these individuals, like I stated, for the last few weeks are kind of put in positions where their mental illness, they don't have the complete control over this mental illness, as well as not having the treatment, and now they're in jail where they're also not getting treatment. So let's kind of get into how this is happening, what's causing it, how this has gotten to this point, and what is actually being done, which, spoiler, is really anything. So let's get into it. Let's kind of start from the beginning. A lot of states have drastically cut their funding to mental health services, pretty much because of the lack of money. And so in doing this, the number of psychiatric beds has gone down, lower numbers than the 1800s. Now, like I said in my first video I did this month, back in the day, there was such a decrease in beds because of the state taking over these hospitals, but over time it did kind of get a little bit better, and now it's a lot worse. So many of these people end up in the prison system because they have nowhere else to go. It has been shown that approximately 356,000 mentally ill and incompetent detainees are in the prison system, compared to 35,000 people who are in psychiatric treatment in state hospitals. That is a drastic difference. And because of this difference, there is a lot of people with mental illness that end up in jail because, well, they're either homeless because they can't work, or they end up doing drugs, and we'll get into that. So let's kind of start looking at what exactly is going on. Due to states closing these psychiatric hospitals around the 2005-2010 times, we've experienced a higher rate of violent crime, essentially aggravated assaults in particular. Many mentally ill people who are not on their medications can become violent. It is possible. Things like bipolar disorder with manic episodes, things like schizophrenia, when you have paranoid ideations and dysfunctional thinking, can lead to violence. And without these medications, they turn to violent crime and then end up more and more in jails at a far higher rate, which could be prevented if they had places to go. Mentally ill individuals in jail are then treated poorly, they're not taken care of, and then they end up reoffending once they leave out, because, well, they weren't just criminals, they had an untreated mental illness that didn't end up getting treated. Especially during, the Great Recession, as we talked about, when, we had the stock market crash in 2008 and all of that happened, a lot of people lost health services because of cuts to budgets. They lost their homes. They lost plenty of things that kind of caused them to end up on the streets. And due to inadequate public mental health services and huge cuts to Medicaid and Medicare, which just totaled to be in about $1.6 billion that were cut to these public services, which is vital for a lot of seriously mental ill patients, because a lot of them, again, like I said plenty of times before, mental health, especially if it's severe mental health, can cause you to not be able to work, not be able to kind of run a normal life, and therefore once your services are cut off, how are you going to be able to get treatment? How are you going to be able to afford medications? You know how much medications cost. So how are they able to afford these things? And even prior to the Great Recession, 1/2 of the people living with serious mental illnesses had not received treatment in over a year. So with these state budget cuts, it's kind of flooded over due to lack of tax revenue, due to pension funds investments losses, and it's crazy to look at, because you think of like budget cuts and you think of like cutting from certain things, but when you look at them cutting from healthcare, especially, or Social Security, especially, which are two things that are very vital to these people who have these mental illnesses, where are they supposed to go? And so, unfortunately, a lot of them end up on the street, and they get picked up for vagrancy, or they get picked up for panhandling. They get picked up for, starting little petty fights, because again, they have a mental illness, and sometimes that can lead to aggression, especially when you're not taking your medications. And then a lot of them end up in prison. I know when I was doing Social Security, well, I still do Social Security, but especially when I was doing it as my primary, sense of income, a lot of my clients had been in jail before, and it's very common, because unfortunately when you're not getting the treatment you need, that's kind of where you end up. As well as the fact that there's been a lot of reform in mental health. So they have changed the criteria for being involuntarily committed. And if you've ever heard someone back in Philly, they used to call it 302, I think here is a 1099 or something. It's essentially when you can admit someone who seems to be a threat to themselves or others, and without their consent. And those restrictions have been increased so that you have to show a different kind of criteria in order to hold them. Now, you might say, well, why would you want to commit somebody involuntarily? A lot of times, some people don't really want to admit they got a problem, and then their issues get worse and worse because they don't want to get treatment. And you're like, they're a threat to themselves or others. And if they're a threat to others, even if it's due to their mental illness, it could lead to violence, which can lead them to jail. Another issue that I found out when I was doing this paper back in the day, and as well as doing my research again, the war on drugs in the 1970s has had a significant increase in putting mentally ill people in jail. Now, again, I've been talking about this for the last few weeks. Self-medication. When you are having a mental illness, you don't have the resources in order to go to the hospital, you don't have the resources in order to get drugs, the treatment drugs that you need, you use street drugs, because A, they're cheaper, and B, they're more available. They're right there. Now, don't get me started on my idea about the war on drugs in general, because that's a whole nother story. But in regards to mental illness, it is definitely a big issue, because when these drugs are being pushed on the street and pushed on the street and pushed on the street, and these people don't have any other resources or any other ways of treating this, and they find out, wow, this little drug that I've been given is kind of helping me feel more at ease. This drug that I'm feeling is helping me cope with my manic episodes or my schizophrenia. Then they're going to keep using it, get busted by the police, end up in jail, get busted by the police, and they're never getting the treatment that they need. So that in and of itself has caused a lot of increase in the mentally ill ending up in prisons. And then one thing you look at outside of that is how they're treated when they're put in jail. A lot of you have heard of solitary confinement, and in my research I found that 62% of those held in solitary confinement within a 42-month period are people with diagnosed mental illnesses. 62% of these people who may have not been getting treatment, may be coming down from drugs, that end up not following the rules of the prison and end up in solitary confinement, which has been shown time and time again can lead to worsening people's mental illnesses. So you have, on top of the fact that these people are here because they're not being treated, then they're put somewhere that's going to make them even worse. It's just very upsetting to see that. Another thing that they do is put them in a 5-point hold, which is very upsetting, but this is usually for people who have mental illnesses that can cause them to be a threat to other people. They kind of restrain them pretty much and keep them in that 5-point hold for an extended amount of time. Now, there is a legal amount of time they're supposed to have them in these holds, but of course They don't always do that. They don't always have enough people to watch over these people with mental illnesses to make sure they don't act up, because I mean, prisons are overcrowded. We live in America. We are the highest, the country with the highest amount of incarcerated people in the world. And we don't even have the highest population in the world, but that's a whole other video. You know what? We are definitely making a video about that, but this is not today. But it's crazy to me when looking at, you know, how we treat the people with mental illnesses in this country. We don't really give them the resources. We cut the budget to all the treatment and the necessary things for them to get healthy, and then we punish them for their mental illnesses and them lashing out when we haven't helped them and put them in jail. And the thing that always made it confusing to me is, if you don't know, jails aren't cheap to keep up. And the fact that we keep putting these people in jails instead of putting them in hospitals to make sure that they don't end up in jails, to keep them healthy, to me, doesn't make any sense. Like, I feel like, you know, of course, you know, with things like the Great Recession, of course, right now, I mean, we are going to cut a lot of a budget in all types of ways. But even doing that, I think, especially with everything going on, mental health should be a major thing that we should be putting money into. And it's just really, I guess, upsetting to me, mainly because, like, I've worked with these people. I've tried to get them help, and I know that the system isn't always trying to get them help, on top of the fact that now we're just throwing them in jails, putting them in solitary confinement, holding them in restraints. And it's like, how is any of this helping? The thing about mental illness is that it's a permanent, most of the time it's a permanent illness. It's not something that you can just be like, okay, let me hold you here and you'll get over it. It's like, it's a permanent illness that needs to be treated, and when we're not treating it and then punishing it, doesn't make any sense. But that's me. I'm done with my rants. But that was just something that I was really interested in, because the criminal justice system in general, like I said, I am making a whole video once mental health awareness is over. Woo child. I got plenty to say about it. But it's very upsetting to see how they treat these people who, unfortunately, I mean, can't control their illnesses, and then just need treatment and they're not getting it. But with that being said, that is today's Friday video. I will, of course, link all the resources I got this from in the description below. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, put them in the comments below. And with that being said, I'll see y'all tomorrow. I actually have a very interesting video for tomorrow, because, like I said last week, I did not know that there was 5 Saturdays in the month. But this one was the one that I came up with once I was scrambling to find something to talk about, and I really think that it is very interesting to talk about. And so I will see y'all on Saturday. I'm not going to give it away, but I will see you on Saturday for a very interesting discussion. With that, I'll see you then. Bye.